Welcome to University Presbyterian Church, where we seek to joyfully share God's boundless love with all in our community without limitation, exception, or condition. Today, I'm excited for us to kick off Conversations for the Common Good, an opportunity for us to partner with local community leaders as we seek to learn more and educate ourselves of some of the most challenging issues affecting the Valley. This is a space for us to be in thoughtful dialogue with one another and to find out how we personally can make a positive impact for change. And I am so glad that you are adding your voice to this conversation today. My name's Ren Cerna. I'm the senior pastor here at University Presbyterian Church, and it is my joy to welcome you to this space. Today, we are excited to welcome Kim Dildine, the executive director of the Central California Food Bank, to share with us about hunger and about how that impacts our valley and so many of our friends and neighbors, as well as how COVID has impacted so many of us in new and unexpected ways in the area of hunger. This is one part out of 3 of our Conversations for the Common Good, which happens on Sunday morning during our normal worship service, because it is an act of worship to thoughtfully educate and engage in conversation as we seek to hear from God and one another about how we can be positive agents for change in the world around us. I am so glad that you're with us today, and if this happens to be your first time with us, I'd like to extend a special welcome to you and hope that you find yourself comfortable and at home with us today. We would love for you to take a minute and introduce yourselves in the comments if you're watching live, or to fill out one of our connection cards, which you can find at upcfresno.org/connect. As a special part of this series, if you fill out a connection card for the first time, we'll make a $5 donation this week in your honor to the Central California Food Bank so that you can make a practical impact by providing meals to people in need here in our city. As we settle into this time and open our hearts to what we will hear said, whether from the stillness of our own heart as God speaks or through the voice of our speaker or the prayers and songs, I would invite you to settle in, to take a deep breath, and to join together with us in song.
Share out everyone. My name is April Alkema, and I'm one of the associate pastors here. I'd like to share with you some of the things that are coming up at University Presbyterian Church in the next couple months. We just began our Conversations for the Common Good series, which I'm so excited about. And today, during the service, you're going to be hearing from one of our first experts sharing about hunger in the valley. But that's not the only way to engage. I invite you specifically to watch tonight the live Q&A interview on Facebook. It's at 7 p.m. And you can ask your questions in the comments and engage in real time and ask any further questions you might have. After that, there's going to be a discussion group that will be going on Wednesday at 7 p.m. And I will actually be there leading, and some other University Presbyterian Church leaders will be there. And this will be an open space for dialogue. So you can go to upcfresno.org/discussions and register for that. There's also some further ways that I invite you to connect with us if you're interested in hearing more about what's going on. You can follow us on social media, UPC Fresno on Instagram, and of course we're on Facebook as well. And today, I invite you to join the virtual lobby right after church. The virtual lobby is just a simple space to connect face-to-face, some structured, simple responses to the sermon, and just see each other in person. I'll be there, Pastor Wren will be there, and I'm very much looking forward to welcoming you. Next, I look forward to hearing from Pastor Wren, who's going to be sharing about God's heart for the vulnerable among us.
One of the things that draws me to God is Jesus' heart for the least, the last, and the lost. Jesus consistently goes against the status quo, choosing poverty over power, the cross over the throne. We see it in Jesus' willingness to eat with the untouchables of his day, to heal the sick, to weep with the brokenhearted, to cross religious and cultural and gender barriers in order to restore people to true community. Jesus meets the physical and concrete needs of those around him because he knows that there's a connection between our physical needs and our spiritual needs, that the hunger in our bellies is nothing compared to the hunger in our souls to be loved and embraced and truly known by those around us. So Jesus works to honor the image of God, which is innate in every living creature, by meeting their basic needs so that the longings of their heart could be met as well. Time and time again, Jesus aligns himself not with the people in power, but with the poor among us, going as far to be born in a stable, not choosing to rule over us in our suffering, but to join us in our suffering, to know the depth of the brokenness and pain that we experience here on earth, so that Jesus could stand with us in the midst of that pain. God consistently throughout Scripture sides with the least, the last, and the lost. And if we want to know Jesus, we must look for him not in the places of power and strength, but rather in the places of brokenness and pain in our world. In the Gospel of Matthew, we hear this wonderful, passionate dialogue with Jesus, where he shares his own heart for the least, the last, and the lost among us, and charges us, his followers, with caring for the vulnerable among us. Hear this morning God's word for us from the Gospel of Matthew. Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. And I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? When was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick and in prison and visited you? And the king will answer them, Truly I tell you, just as you did for one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it for me. What a powerful description of what it means to love and follow Jesus. to feed the poor, to welcome the stranger, to clothe the naked, to heal the sick, to visit the impoverished. Jesus says, whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. And it is in serving the least, the last, and the lost that we serve Jesus himself. Because Jesus has chosen to make his home not in the riches and the glory around us, but in the poverty that influences our world. And if we want to truly know and experience God's boundless love for us, we will encounter it the clearest when we serve those in need. And we recognize the own need that is in our own hearts as well. Jesus challenges those in power here in this text. He's challenging us, you that are blessed by my Father. My guess is that the majority of us watching this service today are blessed in one way or another. Whether it's bellies full of food or roofs over our head, whether it's people who love us or the position we hold in society. Maybe even we are blessed because of the color of our skin. God's desire is that all of creation would know the fullness and breadth of love that God has for us. But we can only experience that if we use our own power for the sake of others. That it's in giving of ourselves that we will know true love. And we have a responsibility to God and to one another to leverage whatever power we have for the sake of the vulnerable among us. Because it's in those moments of service that we encounter the face of Jesus and those that we are with and we're serving and we're feeding. And it's in that moment of service when we allow ourselves to be served in return that we can experience God's greatest blessing for us. This is one of the reasons why UPC is so passionate about feeding our community, that there is such a need for healthy and affordable food here in the Central Valley, and especially in the neighborhood that our physical campus is located at. That's why we're committed to giving away free food to anybody in need. And on a weekly basis, we serve between 900 and 1,000 individuals who are just looking for a meal. And we are that place where we offer God's boundless love and receive that love in return. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Kim Dildine, the Executive Director of the Central California Food Bank, as she shares more about the challenges of hunger and poverty here in the Central Valley and tells us how we practically can make a difference in our community. So I invite you to watch with me as we hear from Kim today. Well, Kim, we're so glad to have you joining us today and to hear your expertise about how hunger is a challenge here in the Valley. I know when I moved to Fresno a few years ago, I was so surprised to learn that Fresno was a food desert and didn't know a whole lot about that, and know that that's where you guys work and invest your time. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more what that means for us here.
Hunger really is a hidden epidemic here in Central California, and it's odd. You know, we produce most of the food definitely for California, the nation, and a lot for the world. Yet 1 in 4 people, and for kids, 1 in 3 kids right here in our community struggle with hunger on a daily basis. But it really is hidden, and if you're not looking, if you're not paying attention, it's really hard to see sometimes. And so, yeah, we grow the food, but so many people are struggling with hunger. The church is in a food desert. And if you think about that, there's really nowhere from your property to walk to a grocery store. It's not accessible. So you think about all the families that live right around campus who, if they don't have access to transportation, they don't have access to high quality food. They might be able to get to a fast food location, but they don't have a supermarket anywhere they can get fresh protein or vegetables anywhere really close.
What are some of the misconceptions people have about hunger?
Probably the biggest misconception is that we spend most of our time and effort feeding homeless people. But really, we serve about 280,000 people every single month, and less than 1% are homeless. Most of our clients have at least one working adult in the home, and they're just hardworking families who don't have enough to make ends meet at the end of the month.
How has COVID complicated things?
Oh goodness. So COVID has grown the need exponentially, and I'm sure you've even seen it in your own pantry. People who never thought they would need emergency food services are having to navigate the emergency food system for the very first time. Whether it's unemployment or underemployment because of COVID. A lot of families are experiencing increased pressure due to skyrocketing childcare costs. Here they thought they had saved enough money for summer and they were going to send their kids back to school, and now they have to pay for a nanny or stay home and not work those hours. Even missing school meals is creating a financial hardship on many of our families who were just eking by before and now really struggle. And I think if we all, assess our own lives, unfortunately we live in a culture that most of us don't have a strong enough savings account that if there's some sort of financial disaster, we could find ourselves in need in one of our lines too. And so we need the public support, we need your support in order to make this service available to families when they need it the most and a lot of times when they least expect it.
I've heard that hunger with kids, especially during COVID, has been really challenging. How has that played out with schools being closed and resources they might normally be getting not being available?
Yeah, so school meals, in Fresno Unified, free and reduced meals were available at breakfast and lunch. A lot of campuses also offered snacks. So that was a lot of meals covered at the school district. And even for those who had to pay for it, the price to pay, even if you're paying full price, was roughly around $2.50. And I know I struggle to feed my kids on $2.50 a meal. And so once you start taking that across, meals and months and they eat a lot during the summer. There's lower participation at school sites. So Fresno Unified in particular, they provided meals at about half their campuses. And so one of the ways that we mobilized during COVID is at the campuses that they were not providing hot meals, we started providing boxes full of food to families in need. And one of our goals was really to break down the barrier of transportation. So if you didn't live in the neighborhood, if your neighborhood school was not providing hot meals, a lot of times there's just no way for the family to get that food. Maybe mom is at home and the one vehicle is at work with dad. Lots of kids who had to be left home alone during the day and just really didn't have access to food. And so we have launched those programs on those Fresno Unified campuses that didn't have hot meals. We've also expanded it to nearly 15 schools. I think it's just under 15 schools in rural counties where they didn't have the infrastructure, either the funds or the staffing to be able to provide hot meals every day. So it's really, really hard, and we know kids need the food for good brain development, especially now that school is back in session. They need to be full in order to focus on their classwork and not how hungry or empty their belly is. And so it's so important. If we want this community to succeed, we need to make sure that our kids are fed and ready to learn and move forward.
Yeah, I so agree. We've been in partnership with you guys for about 5 years with a monthly food distribution that we kicked up to weekly when COVID started. And I've been amazed at how our numbers have shifted, that we went from serving maybe 120 families and individuals to close to 200 to 250 each week, and just how much need there is. And we couldn't do that without you guys providing food, either free or at reduced prices. How do those kinds of food distribution centers play into the work that you guys are doing?
We couldn't do our work without churches and schools and community centers just like you, who take it upon themselves to know the community and be available. Pre-COVID, most of our food went out through agencies just like you. We've had a little bit of a challenge since COVID. Some organizations had older volunteers who didn't feel safe. They weren't sure how it all worked out, and so they really constricted their ability. So partners like UPC help us do this critical work, and we're so grateful that you've been able to regroup and keep your doors open and work tirelessly. I know it's exhausting, both physically moving all that food and emotionally, right? You're emotionally invested in all these families in their physical and their spiritual well-being. And so you care about them and want to help them. And so I know that's a lot to take on, but it's also a beautiful reflection of Jesus. And we couldn't do it without our agency network of over 200 partners. And one of the things I think we've tried to really embrace and repeat over and over, especially during COVID, is that we really are better together. And we can't do this work alone. And so we're trying to leverage each other's strengths, and where do people have connections in the community, and where do they see a need, and can they fill the need?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. What other kind of programs do you guys do? Advocacy, education, supporting families?
We do a lot of work at the state and national level, really talking about hunger in general and the impacts it has on our communities. We advocate for school meals, especially child nutrition. We're big advocates of any type of child nutrition programs. Again, that connection to being ready to learn and to perform in the classroom. We also did some work with Social Security disability. We were one of 2 states until just recently that if you received SSI, you were ineligible for food stamps. And so luckily that recently changed. That changed last summer, I believe. And so really, if it's food specific, we're very active in advocating for our families on how they can get more meals. Recently, we've done some work with the state to get diapers, access to diapers. We know many of our families, while they struggle with food, they also struggle with access to diapers. And you know, as a mom of 5 myself, it's expensive to put diapers on your child, and we know that that's one of the largest barriers to employment for low-income mothers is having clean diapers to provide to the child care provider, whether that's paid or even if the child is going to auntie's house, right? If you can't provide clean diapers for your child, it's hard to leave them with someone else. And so we actually distribute just around 500,000 diapers every single month through our agency partner network to families in need. And so that's currently funded through the state. And so really just always talking to our legislators and representatives on what's important to our families and how can we help them be successful.
Yeah, that's a lot of babies. That's wonderful.
That is a lot of babies.
I have been surprised as COVID has unfolded in the challenge how I've seen such wonderful things happen, whether it's my church rallying to up our food distribution or the ways we've come together and support each other. What stories of life or transformation have you been able to witness?
Yeah, so there's a couple, organizationally, we've actually been at the cutting edge of innovation. So one of the things that we launched is our new Groceries to Go program, and that was actually a collaboration with Bitwise Industries that developed a platform where people could request food. And so it either goes out in a delivery, a home delivery, or a pickup. And so think of like your Walmart, your Target pickup. Families can go online, register for an appointment, and come to the food bank and get their food. Just like your own agency, even though you guys are working hard and you start on time, some people wait a long time in line, right? They want to make sure that there's food there when they get to the front of the line, and so they show up sometimes hours prior to the distribution start. And so, we find that it's really time consuming to be poor, to live in poverty, and people have to go here to get this service and wait in line, and then go here and wait in line at this service. And so they can't be more productive with their time. They can't be spending that time with their children. They can't be educating them. They can't be looking for work or at a job and standing in our lines. And so one of those barriers we wanted to help eliminate was reducing that line. And so we serve about 1,000 families every single month here, every week here on our property, and 250 to 350 get a home delivery. And we're really focusing on elderly and immunocompromised at those home deliveries. And we've seen a significant uptick in Southeast Asian families who've received services through our Groceries to Go, which is really encouraging because for them, it's really reducing a stigma barrier. They won't stand in line typically at our distributions, and so this gives them a more anonymous. They provide us information, but they come in and then they get their food and they move on. So that has been really encouraging, and that's where we had, Bitwise sprung into action. We were able to collaborate and in like 6 weeks had this program launched and running, which is really exciting. One of the clients that I recently met, her name is Carrie, mother of 7, including a disabled child. Her and her husband, both full-time employed, had great jobs, and never thought they would need our services. And within a matter of weeks, found themselves both unemployed at the beginning of COVID. And so they had this combination of, they thought they had great jobs, secure jobs, and they didn't, and the rationing of food. And so they didn't think it was possible that they'd show up at a grocery store and not be able to buy milk or meat to feed their family. And so they were going occasionally to a distribution at a church close to them, and then discovered Groceries to Go and was able to get it immediately, because same thing, that distribution kind of happened once a month, but they needed food now. And it's so nice to be able to serve people when they need it the most, and just be there for them non-judgmentally, and just provide them that service when they're at their lowest, when they're broken. And so Carrie and her family, Carrie was able to secure a job relatively fast, and I'm happy to report her husband just started working in the last 2 weeks. But it was a long haul, and she tells me that they thought they were going to buy their first home this year, and they had to deplete their savings to stay afloat, right? And so just really, really heartbreaking and tough choices. And who could have planned for, a worldwide
None of us.
pandemic, right? Yeah. So, it feels good.
Such a gift
to be able to give back.
Yeah. So when I think of hunger in our community and the need, I don't really know where to start, and I would imagine that a lot of people watching today don't really know either. So what are some concrete things we can do to help out in this crucial issue? Yeah,
well, the easiest, if you feel safe and you're healthy, is to volunteer at your pantry here at UPC. It really gives you a picture of what families look like in our community, and it will likely surprise you. It will break every stereotype that you have. We also recruit volunteers here at the property. Because of COVID, we're trying to pre-bag as much food as possible to kind of relieve some of that burden out in our agency network, and to allow, when possible, for drive-through distributions. And so we used to host up to 250 volunteers at a time. Because of COVID and social distancing, we host up to 30. Everyone's 6 feet apart. Everyone wears their masks, and so we provide a very safe environment to help provide food here. But we also have, if bagging food isn't your thing, answering phones, entering data. I mean, we have a ton of volunteer opportunities. Donations are always welcome, again, to your own pantry here at UPC and directly to us. One of the ways that we're able to provide the food that we do to UPC is every dollar donated provides up to 7 meals in our community. And so we can stretch that really, really far, and we pass those savings on to our agencies on some of the purchased product items that we don't get donated. And then just awareness and advocacy. Be mindful, because 1 in 4 people in our community struggle with hunger. It's in every single neighborhood. There's someone in your office who's struggling with hunger and trying to figure out how to make ends meet. There's, you know, the kid that was on your child's Little League team, right, struggles with hunger. There's probably an elderly individual in your neighborhood that is struggling with hunger. And so really just being aware to the needs of others and helping them where you can. So on our website at ccfoodbank.org, there's lots of information on volunteering, donating, just basic information about hunger. But also that's a great location if you know someone who needs services. There's a map to all of our distributions. I know not all of your members live in the neighborhood of the church, but there are distributions in every neighborhood across Central California. And so you can put in your address and find your closest distribution.
That's great. And we'll put a link to your website and your donation link on our page and have more information on ways you guys can practically help and volunteer. We are excited to be welcoming Kim back tonight. We're doing Facebook Live, where you can submit questions beforehand or show up at 7 o'clock on our social media and ask questions live, an opportunity to kind of dig a little deeper into this topic and see how you and I can make a difference. So I'd invite you to plan on joining us for that. But I am so thankful, Kim, for you spending the time with us today to share a little bit about your expertise and the inspiring work that you guys are doing. So
yeah,
thank you
thanks for having me, and this is very exciting. And again, we're so grateful for the partnership of UPC and the incredible work and the incredible impact you're making in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
I invite you now to join me in prayer. Holy God, we thank you for your table, the table that you offer to all of us, of your mercy and your love. At your table, there is room enough for everyone. But we acknowledge today that we live in a society in which some have plenty to eat and others do not have enough. We ask now that you break our hearts for what breaks yours, and shape and form us into the kinds of people who participate in the work that you're doing, the work that creates systems where everybody has what they need, where everybody knows your love and mercy. We also think at this time of those who are affected by the Creek Fire and all the other fires around the state. Our hearts break as we hear the stories and the news. It's difficult to see, but it must be so much more difficult to be experiencing. We ask that you send your love and compassion in the form of physical help, prayers, and just loving community that are surrounding all those impacted. And now we pray the prayer that you taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. We are so thankful for the ways that your contributions have made possible a weekly food distribution during this pandemic. Through these contributions, we have been serving food to 950 individuals a week, and that's amazing. I thank you so much for your giving heart. If you want to make a gift to contribute to ministries like this at UPC, you can go to upcfresno.org/give. You're also invited to give directly to the food bank, and the link for that is also on the website. At this time, I invite you to join us together in song.
Friends, thanks again for spending the time engaging in this difficult issue with us. Next week, we are overjoyed to welcome Dr. Dimpna Ugwu-Oju as she speaks on racial inequality here in the Central Valley. We are looking forward to engaging with you more this week as we continue to dialogue together, whether that's joining us at the virtual lobby immediately following this service live, or on social media tonight at 7, or even our discussion group on Wednesday. You have such an important perspective and experience to add to this conversation. We would love for you to join us as we seek to joyfully share God's boundless love in a new way. My prayer and my blessing for you this week is that you go out, that you would be overwhelmed by God's love for you, that you would see the joy of God breaking through the cracks of challenge and difficulty in your life, and that all that you do, that you would stand for the least, the last, and the lost amongst us as we dedicate ourselves for standing with those who are in need of our voice. Go in love and peace.
Thank you.